Hi, my name is Toby Pierce, and I'd like to share a devotional thought with you today. We're continuing our journey through the book of Acts, and last time we ended in Acts chapter 23 and verse 11, where Paul he's in Jerusalem, and there's been this angry mob that's been really trying to kill him, and he's rescued by some Roman soldiers, but then he's taken by them in front of the Jewish council, the chief priests and the scribes, and the Romans trying to find out, well, what do they really have against this man, this Paul? And then what happens there is that Paul realizes that some of them were Sadducees and some of them were Pharisees, and so he says, I'm a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee, and it's because I believe in the resurrection that I'm being on trial here, and that ends up stirring folks up even more, and the Romans rescue him again. And here in verse 11 of chapter 23, kind of picking up where we left off last time, it says, the following night the Lord stood by Paul, and said, take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome. Just want to point out again that the Lord stood by Paul to strengthen him that night. I mean, what a magnificent experience to have the Lord Jesus standing by him. What a great night. And then right after that, the next day, Paul gets threats on his life. But that's how things seem to go sometimes, isn't it? You can go from a wonderful spiritual high to a frightening low. Well, let's read about it. Verse 12, here in Acts 23. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, we have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. Now, therefore, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were going to determine his case more exactly, and we are ready to kill him before he comes near. Well, so last time we saw where the Roman government commanded that the council meet, and now we see this group of Jews, more than 40, are telling the chief priests and the elders, the council, what to do. They say they're not going to eat or drink until they've killed Paul, and the leadership apparently goes along with their demand, either by succumbing to it or maybe even delighting in it. Verse 16. Now the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush, so he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him. So he took him and brought him to the tribune and said, Paul the prisoner called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say to you. The tribune took him by the hand and going aside asked him privately, what is it you have to tell me? Perhaps we don't always think about the Apostle Paul as just a person, with a family. But, here his young nephew is visiting him. We don't know how young Paul's nephew is, but perhaps it tells us something that the centurion takes him by the hand, takes Paul's nephew by the hand and takes him to the tribune, and then the tribune takes him by the hand to talk to him. It seems like he's fairly young for that to be kind of the appropriate way for these men to treat him. And yet we see in the next couple of verses that he's old enough to communicate very well what he has to say to the tribune. So continuing on here, verse 20. And he, the nephew, Paul's nephew, said, the Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow as though they were going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not be persuaded by them, for more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him, who have bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for your consent. So the tribune dismissed the young man, charging him, "Tell no one that you have informed me of these things." So the tribune wanted to keep secret the fact that Paul's nephew had told him about the Jews' plot. Keeping it secret would help protect Paul's nephew and would keep the Jews who had made this deadly vow from finding out what steps the tribune was about to take to foil their plan. Verse 23. Then he called 2 of the centurions and said, "Get ready 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix, the governor." The 3rd hour of the night would be about what we would call 9 p.m. The evening started at about 6 p.m., and so the 3rd hour of the night would be about 9 p.m. Now that's not to be confused with the 3rd hour of the day. The 3rd hour of the day would be 9 a.m. The day started about 6 a.m. Mark 15:25 says that Jesus' crucifixion began the 3rd hour of the day, so 9 a.m. in our culture. But here in Acts 23, Paul was being taken out of the city by night, 3rd hour of the night, 9 p.m. If you're keeping up with the math, the tribune ordered that 470 men altogether escort Paul to keep him safe from those that vowed to kill him. Verse 25. And he wrote a letter to this effect: Claudius Lysias, to His Excellency the Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen. And desiring to know the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he was being accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving death or imprisonment. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers to state before you what they have against him. So Lysias is trying to protect Paul because Paul was a Roman citizen. And this shows that Lysias understood that Paul had not broken any Roman law, and that the dispute the Jews had with Paul was really over their own traditions. It's important to note that here too that Paul had not actually broken any Old Testament law either. Verse 31. So the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. On the next day, they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go on with him. When they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from. And when he learned that he was from Cilicia, he said, "I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive." And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. So Paul left Jerusalem at night with the soldiers. They traveled to Antipatris, verse 31, which is about 35 to 40 miles from Jerusalem. The infantry returned to Jerusalem the next day, but the horsemen continued with Paul from Antipatris to Caesarea, and this is Caesarea Maritima, or it was maybe even pronounced Maritima, which is on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, verses 32 and verses 33, which is about another 30 miles farther. So the soldiers, the foot soldiers, returned back, and the folks on the horses, including Paul, continue about another 30 miles. If you pronounce this Caesarea, if you call it Maritima, which may not be accurate, but it helps in remembering that it's Caesarea on the sea, on the Mediterranean Sea, and not Caesarea Philippi. Well, Jesus promised Paul that he would get to witness for Christ in Rome, and 470 men helped protect Paul from those who had taken a vow to kill Paul. I assume that the more than 40 persons who had vowed not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul eventually must have broken their vow and gone back to their diet. We don't know how God's going to take care of us always. Paul would likely have preferred to travel with his normal traveling companions and enjoyed their company. But Paul trusts God, and God takes care of him. Maybe not in a way that Paul would have thought, but then could Paul have even imagined that God would arrange for 470 soldiers to keep him safe? What's happening in your life where you can see God working perhaps in wonderful ways, even if it's not quite the way you thought it would be? I hope you have a blessed day.
If you would like more information, or if you'd like to participate in our Bible studies and worship services, we would love to have you come join us at the Northeast Church of Christ in Albuquerque, New Mexico.